Today our topic is monopoly. In our last discussion, we discussed about competition or a perfect competition. Now we will see the other extreme type of market in which there is only one seller and how the single seller behaves in the market in order to maximize their profit. So let's start by sharing screen with you and use. So monopoly, cartels, and price discrimination, that's the whole topic, what we're going to cover in two parts, part one and part two. Uh, as the name is reflecting, monopoly. Monopoly means a person having a full control. There is a one game, a board game. We also call them as a monopoly. The objective of playing that game is when two players are playing on a monopoly board. So the objective is that the winner will be the who owns all the properties which are mentioned on the board. So create a monopoly. So the objective of that monopoly game is that who is going to create a monopoly. Very similar meaning here. Although it's a Greek word, monopoly. Cartels and price discrimination. The cartels means when a group of different firms or different people join hand together, which can be a legal or which can be a illegal, but their objective is to make more profit, and they behave like a monopolist. So that's why we attach this topic with this monopoly. There is not necessarily that only one firm is operating, but many firms are operating, but they join hand together to make a cartel, and by this way they want to earn a monopoly profit. The third topic in our today's discussion is price discrimination. So we'll see that how the monopolies behave in a market in which more people are willing to buy, but they cannot afford or they cannot be able to pay the price at which the monopoly is selling. So how the monopoly will be able to sell more without reducing the price for all others. So they discriminate among the consumers or the buyers on the basis of gender, on the basis of status of their and on the basis of their purchasing power. So they discriminate and sell the products according to their ability and purchasing power. So we will see that how price discrimination is working in our present day, and how they in which areas it is possible, in which area it is not possible. So first we focus on the revenue aspect. A single price monopolist means a monopoly who is charging only single price, no price discrimination, single price. So we are first assuming a simple monopoly in which the monopolist is charging a single price. So revenue concept from monopolist: unlike a perfectly competitive firm, a monopolist faces a negatively sloped curve. So that's a big difference between a monopoly and the competitive firm. A competitive firm is facing a horizontal demand curve. However, the monopolist is facing a downward sloping demand curve. So a monopolist faces a trade-off. Now, downward sloping demand curve means that if the monopolist wants to sell one more unit, the monopolist has to reduce the price because it's a downward sloping. So in order to sell one more unit, the price will go down. So in this case, the monopolist is facing a trade-off. The trade-off between, if they want to sell more, they have to reduce the price, or if they want to charge a high price, they will be able to sell less. So that's a trade-off. So if a monopolist charges the same price for all units sold revenue, so if the monopolist is selling at a single price, what we are assuming right now, that the monopolist is a single price monopolist. So what is the revenue for the monopolist is P into Q. So the revenue R is equal to P into Q. Now, if we want to find out the average revenue, so how we can do that? We divide this total revenue, which is P into Q, divided by Q, which is the number of units. So by this way, again, the average revenue is equal to P. So it's very like a competitive firm. The average revenue is equal to price, and total revenue is equal to P into Q. So we see here that since the demand curve shows the price of the product, it follows that the demand curve is also the monopolist average cost, average revenue curve, average revenue curve. So since the demand curve shows the price of the product, it follows that the demand curve is also the monopolist average revenue curve. However, when we see the marginal revenue of a monopolist with a single price monopolist, we see that it's a different change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. So when we want to sell one more unit, what is going to happen? And we have to reduce the price. So minor revenue is resulting from the sale of one more unit of the product. So because of the downward sloping demand curve, the monopolist must reduce the price that it charges on all units to sell an extra unit. So the price received for the extra unit sold is not the firm's minor revenue, because by reducing the price on all previous units, the firm loses some revenue. So it's a decrease in revenue is more as compared to the price at which the last unit is sold. So minor revenue is equal to the price minus the lost revenue. And if we see, we can say very safely that marginal revenue is less than price. So the minor revenue resulting from the sale of an extra unit is less than the price than the monopolist received for that unit. The monopolist minor revenue curve always lies below the demand curve. So if we look at this graph and table, so let's see to go deep into this table to understand the whole idea as well as this graph. So that makes more easy for to understand. So we see here that the first one is a price, the second one is a quantity. So it's a demand schedule. When we plot, when we multiply this price and quantity, we get it a total revenue. So 10 multiplied by 0 is 0, 9 multiplied by 10 is 90, 8 multiplied by 20 is 160, and 7 multiplied by 30 is 210, and so on. We see that this is. Now, if we want to calculate the change in total revenue, so how much we can see the change from the first to the second, it's a $90 increase, and then there's a $70 increase, and then how much is a $50, $30, $10, then there's a $10 negative, it's a decrease, and then again there is a $30 decrease and $50 decrease and 70 and then $90 decrease. So these are just a change in total revenue. If we divide with the quantity, with the change in quantity, with the change in quantity is from 0 to 10 and 10 to, so every time that quantity is changing by 10, so we divide it with the 10, we get it 9, 7, 5, 3, 1, 1 minus 3, minus 5, minus 7, minus 9. So it's become negative. If we look at the graphically, so we see the first, this line, which is average revenue or the demand curve, which is, as we discussed before, they are equal. They are equal. Now, marginal revenue curve is less than the average or a demand curve. So it's going to, we see here that this is a marginal revenue curve. And we see also that the marginal revenue can be a negative as well. So this the graph goes into the negative zone as well. Now, how the monopolists are going to maximize their profit. And we know that the profit is going to be maximized because monopolist is facing a downward sloping demand curve. So it's very important that monopolist has to select a quantity at which how much they can sell. That should be the maximum. So the profit maximizing quantity where MC is equal to MR, right? We already discussed in a competitive market that the quantity which maximize the profit is where marginal cost is equal to minor revenue. Why? Because if the marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, it is better that we have to produce one more, because the revenue what we are generating and the cost we are incurring is less and the revenue is generating more. So it's when we produce more, the profit is increasing. Or if the cost is more and the revenue is less, marginal cost is greater and the marginal revenue is less. So in that case, it is good to reduce the quantity so that we can make more profit. So this is the standard for all the three markets, what we so far discussed, perfect competition and the monopoly, and that minor revenue is equal to minor cost, that's the quantity where the profit is maximum. So the price is determined by the demand curve. But here, the price is determined by the demand curve. So we find out the maximizing quantity by equating minor revenue is equal to marginal cost, and then take this quantity into our demand function, and that demand function gives us the price, that how much we can charge, because it's a market demand curve and it's downward sloping. So we figure it out the quantity that maximizes the profit and take that quantity into our demand curve to figure it out at what price the monopolist can change. So one point I want to make it clear here, that monopolist is not deciding the price. Monopolist is deciding the quantity, that which quantity is going to maximize their profit. So that quantity is going to determine the price the monopolist can charge. So we see here that because P is greater than ATC, the monopolist is making an economic profit. So we see here that the price the charge by the monopolist is P star, and the cost is C. So it means that P is greater than C. So monopolist is making an economic profit. So monopolist does not have a supply curve because it is not a price taker. So that's a big difference between a competitive market and monopolist or a monopoly market. So the monopolist chooses its profit maximizing price quantity and combination from among the possible combinations on the market demand curve. Can we compare the monopoly outcome to the competitive outcome? Yes, competition and monopoly compared. The level of output is a monopolized industry is less. So how the monopolist can charge more price? Because they are producing less as compared to a competitive market. The level of output that would be produced if the industries were perfectly competitive. For a perfectly competitive market, price is equal to marginal cost. But here the price is greater than marginal cost. So for a monopoly, price is greater than marginal. So in a monopoly, the marginal value to society of an extra unit as reflected by the price exceeds the marginal cost of producing the unit, because my marginal cost is not equal to price. So that's more economic surpluses would be generated for a society if the market is monopolist increase its level of output. So if they produce more, so the society is going to get benefit. The monopolist profit maximizing decision to restrict output below the competitive level creates a loss of economic surplus for society as a deadweight loss. So in a monopoly market, we have a deadweight loss. In a perfectly competitive market, there is no deadweight loss. But in a monopoly, we have a deadweight loss. And the reason for that is that the monopolist is producing less than competitive market. And what we can easily say now that it is an inefficient market. So here we see that M stands for monopoly. So this is a quantity of a monopoly. This is a quantity of a competitive market. So we see here the competitive market is producing up till the demand and supply, or marginal cost can be a supply curve. So this point, and where the monopolist is producing less than that. And this triangle, which is shaded triangle, is a deadweight loss to the society, or that is a loss of a consumer or a producer surplus in this. So for a monopoly profit to persist, the entry of new firms must be prevented. So as we said before, that there is a economic profit in a monopoly, and the reason for that economic profit is that entry is not allowed. So when in a competitive market, whenever there is an economic profit, new firms enter. But in a monopoly case, the entry is banned, or there is a barrier that the new firms cannot enter. So for that reason, this economic profit persists for a long run as well. So for a monopoly profit to persist, the entry of a new firms must be prevented. So entry barriers can be natural or can be created. So there are some natural barriers, and we call them as a natural monopolies, but there are some created ones. In mostly cases, there are created ones. A natural monopoly, when we say, is a monopoly in which the level of efficiency or the minimum long-run average cost is achieved at a very large scale. For example, and that's also involves the network effect in the natural monopolies. Like, for example, BC Hydro or any firm who is providing electricity in most of the cities in the world is only one firm. The reason is that they have to lay down a network of system like wires and cables to reach to each and every home and each and every consumer. So it is useless if two firms are creating this network, and out of these two you have to take a one. So for that reason, it is good that only one firms operate in that type of market, and that type of market we call them as a natural monopolies. For example, like electricity provider or a natural gas providers. So these are the monopolies in which it is good that we have to be a single firm. But there are other monopolies which are created, by the society or by the government. So these are called as government created monopolies. And what are the reason for creating that? The patent laws, copyright laws, or franchise, and all these things are monopolies created by the rules and regulations. Network effect as a barrier entry. So benefit to the user depends on how many other uses the product, and powerful entry barriers that can help to sustain monopoly profits. And we see in our age, like the cell phone, different types of softwares or apps. These are all based on networkings, and their values are increasing if more and more users are there. A Facebook was invented in a dorm, in a university dorm, with only few friends, but later on it becomes a powerful social media. The reason is that the users all over the world. So that's the reason. Twitter, Microsoft, these are all the examples that we can say it is having a network effect in a very long run. But now the point is that how long these monopolies, which are created monopolies, can sustain in the long run. So in the very long run, technological changes and innovations can circumvent effective entry barriers. So because this technology has changed, the society's behavior changed. No one nowadays no one is using a landline. But about 50 years ago, landline landline phones, when there was no cell phone. So it's very important. So technology changed, and now there is no such impact. Now, there was an economist, we call them as a Joseph Schumpeter. Schumpeter, during 1883 to 1950, defended monopoly on the basis that pursuit of monopoly profit provides incentive to innovate. So he is of the opinion that all the developments in the developed world, like US or other parts of the world, is because of the monopoly power, of how they are given, like a copyrights, patents, and all these things. And we observed in our daily life as well. So one person created a fine video or a music or a book or a software or an app is going to earn more if they have a patent or a copyright for that. Schumpeter called the replacement of one monopolist by another through innovation the process of creative destruction. So he used in his paper creative destruction, a term like a creative destruction, that it's a creative but that's going to destroy the others. So in the words of Schumpeter, who wrote a paper on this creative destruction, what we have to accept is that monopoly has come to be the most powerful engine of progress, and in particular of a long-run expansion of a total output, not only in spite of, but to a considerable extent through the strategy of creating monopolies, which look so restrictive when viewed in the individual case and from the individual point of view. So very simple. As an individual, we always hate monopoly, like they are charging more prices, like what we are paying insurance for our cars. We hate like this is, we are paying more as compared to people living in Ontario. Same is the case with the other things for a medicine and all these things. We are paying more as compared to if there is a competitive market. But as a whole society, as a whole economy, it is good that they provide an incentive to innovate new things, to generate new ideas and all this. So what is a lesson from a history? Disruptive technologies and creative destruction. So these are the two terms coined in this perspective of a monopoly. Nearly 80 years ago, Joseph Schumpeter coined the phrase creative destruction to describe the elimination of one product by a superior one. Nowadays, it is a disruptive technologies. Development of a new product displace old ones. So technological progress acts as an agent of change and economic growth that comes with a periodic loss of privileged positions on the part of displaced firms and their workers. So the point here we want to make from the history is that monopolies are not forever. And innovations, technological developments, all these are changing one firm with another firm or one person with another person. So this is all about. So in the second part, we're going to cover about the cartels and price discrimination. So keep watching. Thank you.